Joining us now is Susan Stimpson. Susan is in Virginia. She's in Stafford County. And Susan ran for lieutenant governor in 2013 as a Republican, was defeated there at the convention, which E.W. Jackson won, which I never saw coming, by the way. Susan also ran for House of Delegates member in a primary against then Speaker Bill Howell. I believe that was in 2015, right here in Virginia. And she's joining us today. Hey, Susan, welcome.
Hey, good morning, John. I was getting a little worried there. I've been on hold, so I'm glad that I got through.
Hey, just let me give a full disclaimer. Susan ran for office 2 times. The John Fredericks Radio Network was hostile to both of her candidacies, lieutenant governor, and when she challenged Bill Howe for House of Delegates. But that was then. Susan, and this is now, so we've turned the page. Also, Susan, we know you've been through some personal challenges. And so my big question to you is, are you feeling better, and are things going well for you personally? Then we can get into the politics.
John, thank you so much for asking. I really appreciate it. Yes, things are going great, and there's nothing like the issue of life to encourage me to just use my voice and be involved. And right now in Virginia, the liberals are pushing the Equal Rights Amendment, which is really a way to enshrine abortion dollars, and I'm just speaking out on that because, unfortunately, once again, we have Republicans that are traitors, like Senator Jill Vogel, who is leading the fight with the liberal wing to rush this through. She has a committee meeting today that she's called on the very first day of session to rush this through. So thank you for having me.
Okay, so we're going to talk about the Equal Rights Amendment in Virginia, and I know there's a lot of people backing this. I guess my question is, the last time I remember the Equal Rights Amendment like being a battle, I was 17 or 18, and it was like 1974, and Phyllis Schlafly was leading the effort against it. I think I was in college playing baseball, wondering what the deal was, and people would go around with ERA buttons on. I was in New Jersey at the time. I don't really remember what New Jersey did, but that was in the 70s, Susan. That was 50 years ago. 50 years ago. All of a sudden, like 1975, it's just coming up on 2020. That's 40 years. Well, let's see, that's 45 years removed. Why all of a sudden now is this like back in play?
I think that you can look at what happened with President Trump and the Republicans and the battle for the Supreme Court and what they did to Justice Kavanaugh. It's about enshrining abortion into the Constitution and the millions of dollars that flow to it, because you're right. The ERA, it expired in 1982. They did not reach the 3/4 of states to ratify it that they needed, and it expired. So it was DOA, but they have resurrected it, and I think you need to look no further than the Supreme Court to know that that's what's really going on here. It's for the right to abortion, and it's for the millions of dollars that flow to that industry.
So how does ratifying the Equal Rights Amendment in Virginia, which even if it is ratified, there's now a constitutional legal argument that those states that ratified it before would have to re-ratify it. And you need what? You need 2/3 of the states. I just don't see it as a realistic proposition right now. But when you say that it will increase abortions, how exactly would that work? Like, walk us through why you make that assertion, Susan.
Well, I'm not an attorney, but Ken Cuccinelli was and is an amazing attorney. He served as Virginia's former attorney general, and he sent a letter on January the 6th to all the delegates and the senators that said passing the Equal Rights Amendment will forcibly expand access to state-funded abortion, including court-ordered public funding of abortion, because what it will do is show the judges, which the federal and state judges in states all around the United States that have passed the ERA, they view this as legislative intent, that the legislators want the courts to look at abortion as they would any other medical procedure. Therefore, you can't deny tax dollars to pay for abortions.
Okay, so what you're saying is passing the Equal Rights Amendment in Virginia, or I guess passing it nationally, would then be a veil in order to not deny abortion funding through taxpayer-funded subsidies. Is that basically what the argument is?
Abortion is to be viewed as any other medical procedure. And so this enshrines it in the Constitution. Right now, the right to an abortion is just really based on a judicial opinion that doesn't have legislative intent behind it. And as you saw in the Supreme Court battle, that's really what the liberal left wing of America is concerned about, is enshrining abortion. So it also threatens churches and their tax-exempt status as well, because the ERA states you shall not discriminate based on sex. So one example would be the Catholic Church. They have an all-male priesthood or clergy, and possibly under the Equal Rights Amendment, churches will not be able to have that type of doctrine. They're going to have to change their doctrine.
Well, that's a real issue. I'm a Catholic, and that certainly is an issue because they might lose their tax-exempt status, and I've heard that from my clergy saying that is a real possibility. So obviously, I think that's one of the issues. But let's get to Dave LaRock. Okay, so Dave LaRock, House of Delegates member in the Leesburg, West Loudoun area. So Dave LaRock says, look, if you pass this Equal Rights Amendment, women in Virginia are going to be, or anywhere, but I guess specifically he said in Virginia, are going to be able to go bare-chested, no top, because, well, men can go bare-chested, so it's got to be equal, right? Now, I have no opinion on that. I have no opinion, and I take no position on what type of clothing a woman does or doesn't wear. So I'm an agnostic on bare-chested women, totally. But is that real? I mean, what Dave is saying, is that actually something that could happen?
I have no idea what he's talking about. I know that women have, equal rights now under the 14th Amendment, and there's no reason to pass this. I mean, I have no idea what Dave LaRock is talking about. I want to keep this focused on enshrining abortion dollars in the Constitution, and I'm concerned about churches and their tax-exempt status, and that the government is going to come in and tell churches that they have to change their doctrine according to the way the government thinks that they should lead their churches.
So how we understand it is right now I've heard, and several people have told me this, Eileen Fillerkorn, who's the new Democratic minority leader in the House of Delegates, who have a one-seat deficit, she said that if the vote goes to the floor, she's the whip, that she has the votes to pass it, okay, in the House. The state Senate, I have absolutely no idea. Republicans have a one-vote seat there. But Fillerkorn says it's going to pass the House, and I believe her. So basically then, if it's going to do that, then really the only way to stop it is in the Virginia State Senate, of which the Republicans have a 21-19 deficit. And then what Fillerkorn said on the Susan Plott show is that if Senate Republicans block it, that will be a hammer over their head going into the 2019 election, and that would cost the Republicans control of the state Senate, because it would motivate women voters to come out and vote out the Republicans who didn't back the ERA amendment. What do you have to say to that?
That's the narrative that Republicans are falling into. Republicans like Senator Jill Vogel and Senator Glenn Sturtevant and Senator Dunavant, who are leading the charge to pass the ERA along with their Democrat colleagues in the Senate. But Delegate Mark Cole is chairman of the House Privileges and Elections Committee, and for the last 5 years he has ruled that this is not properly before the body, and he is correct, because it expired in 1982. So I don't believe it's going to get through the House, but what I need the listeners to do, if they care about this, if they care about their tax dollars being used to fund abortion, churches being told by the government how they need to lead and what House members, especially Speaker Kirk Cox, this is all in his hands. What is his legacy going to be? Last year he caved on Medicaid expansion. He caved on Planned Parenthood funding. I certainly hope this year he doesn't cave on this, and he will allow abortion dollars to be enshrined in the Constitution. So today, Senator Jill Vogel, it's unprecedented. On the very first day of session, she is holding a hearing in the Senate Privileges and Elections Committee to quickly rush this through the Senate. So please contact her and members of the Privileges and Elections Committee and get in touch with your House members. Delegate Mark Cole has the power within his hands to stop this from passing in Virginia, and we're counting on him to do the same as he's done the last 5 years.
Well, Susan, first of all, I take exception to saying that Kirk Cox caved on anything. Many of us were in favor of Medicaid expansion, as I was in Virginia, because it helps the working poor in Southwest Virginia get access to medical coverage that they didn't have. They have jobs. They just were falling through the cracks. So that was also one of the promises that President Trump made during the campaign, that he would find ways to provide the working poor with access to the healthcare system. So I don't think Kirk Cox caved on it. I think he was very bold and courageous in doing the right thing. But we're not debating that today. That's already been litigated and passed. Cox did the right thing. But here's the problem with what you're saying. The ERA in Virginia, of which, again, I could care less, all right, because I'm not sure that it's ever going to mean anything, because the bigger argument is that the other states that have ratified it, it was too long ago, and they've all got to get re-ratified. You'll never get 2/3. But the argument that it should be bottled up in committee, I mean, isn't that like the kind of inside baseball stuff, Susan, that drives people bananas? Like, if it has the votes to pass, I mean, I think what Vogel said is, let's have a hearing on it, let's debate it, and either it's got the votes or not. Why depend on Mark Cole putting a cap on it and squashing it in committee without due process? What's the thinking behind that?
The due process is we have a representative government, and each person that serves in the General Assembly represents their constituents and their people. And they are elected to make these type of decisions. I believe that Mark Cole made the correct ruling that this legislation expired. Therefore, it should not be considered because it's not properly before the body. What Jill Vogel is doing is circumventing the law, and she's a lawyer. It expired in 1982. They have no business voting on this. It has no legal merit, but we know that it's moving through because the attorneys and the lawyers can argue anything. And I just want to go back to, what do Republicans believe and what do Democrats believe? And look, I give it to the Democrats. They state what they believe, and then they follow through on their promises. My issue with some of the Republican leadership is they make promises and then they break them. They break their vow and their covenant with the people who elected them. And I am calling on Jill Vogel to not break her promise. She said that she was pro-life. She said that she was against Obamacare. And she's voting the opposite of what she said. So it's a representative government. And I think that Mark Cole is making the correct legislative decision. This expired in 1982. Therefore, it's not properly before the body, and they should not be voting on it.
So it's more of a political vote than anything else. So they vote on it, it passes, it goes nowhere, it has no impact on Virginia. It's basically a political ploy for both sides. They can claim victory or not, but it really has no ramifications going forward. So I get back to this. If what you're saying is true, that it doesn't have legal standing, then let them vote on it. Who cares?
Because it doesn't have legal standing, and therefore they shouldn't take a vote on it. But it's worth noting that the ERA proponents have consistently said that abortion access is an indispensable component of their initiative. If it's not going anywhere, then why is everyone wasting millions of dollars in an ad and branding campaign? And why is the ERA lobbying the General Assembly today in Virginia? I take issue with what you're saying, that it's not going anywhere, because clearly there is a motive behind this and a push behind this to get this through the legislatures because, look at what happened with Justice Kavanaugh. It's a very real issue, and the liberal wing is obsessed with abortion and obsessed with control of the Supreme Court, and they're going to fight Donald Trump, and they're going to fight Republicans in the Senate once again. It's just a part of that fight.
All right, Susan B. Stimpson, it's good to have you back. You sound great. Hope you're doing well. We'll have you back as this debate continues in the Virginia General Assembly. I'm unconvinced that it matters, but I got an open mind, and I certainly am concerned about the fact that it's going to affect the Catholic Church, which is I'm quite versed on. Susan B. Stimpson, thank you for being with us. You can follow her at Susan B. Stimpson.